What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. Welcome to Saturday. Thanks for coming out. Got a very, very special interview today. I'm going to be interviewing Steve Herman, W7VOA. And boy, we're going to have a lot of fun. He's got an interesting background, not just with the journalism aspect of everything that he's up to, but also ham radio. Yep, that's his call sign, W7VOA, and that's his Twitter name as well. And that's how I found him. So enjoy the memes as I kick things off. And how's it going, everybody? I'm Josh, KI6NAZ. Thanks so much for coming out to the Ham Radio Crash Course again for another week. Today, I'm very excited, very honored to be able to bring this interview and have this discussion with Steve Herman. It's going to be so much fun. So before we get to it, though, you know I like to kick off with a little bit of news. So let's jump right into that because there's a lot to talk about. And of course, the website's not loaded. So there you go. See, that's what it's like live. Pretend like the website's there. I'm loading it right now. Well, anyway, go ahead and check out hamradiocrashcourse.com for all the news and information of what we are going into, connected to, our podcasts, our affiliate links are there as well. Hamtactical.com is where you can get the shirts that we'll be wearing when we go to Huntsville Hamfest. So if you want to support the channel that way, you have like a day, maybe today, to order them. If they still make it by the time you travel, I hope they do. A note on Huntsville. A couple of the major retailers have backed out. We knew about MFJ, and we had recently heard about DX Engineering, but now also Diamond is out. So next week, Monday, we're going to get a new map showing basically the layout of where everybody's going to be, the different booths. So if you're going, go check out that map. I'm still planning on going, assuming nothing changes. Considering Alabama, I don't expect necessarily that the state is going to mandate a shutdown, but we don't know. I will be wearing a mask, though, so just keep that in mind when you come up and say hi. All right. The giveaway is still on for Bridgecom Systems. They're $4,300 basically giveaway, so the link is in the description for that. It's coming up soon, though, so you have 15 days, basically, as it states there, so check that out. And while at Huntsville, I will be doing a live stream where I'm going to give away some Radioddity radios. The link is in the description for Radioddity if you just want to go check them out, or if you're interested in buying something from them, there will be a $15 coupon code if you are interested in that. Okay, I want to get to our interview quickly. So here is Steve Herman's website, also his Twitter. It is linked in the description to check him out. I found Steve on Twitter. That's probably where he is the most prominent. Steve is the White House bureau chief for the Voice of America. I cannot tell you how excited I am, so we're just going to bring him in right now. So, Steve, how are you? Oh, and he's got a frozen, that's what happens when we do it live again. Fix it. There we go. Gotcha, Steve. Go ahead and unmute. I think you got muted.
Yes.
Hey, how are you doing? So I'm going to be playing around with that a bit. We ran into a new Zoom bug right as we kick things off. I never touch my Zoom, and of course it starts freezing up on me. So I think I've got it sorted. But Steve, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm doing great. I heard there's free radios, so that's why I came on.
Well, there may be free radios next weekend at Huntsville if people don't want to drive their boat anchors home from the flea market, but we'll see how it goes. So, Steve, give the people watching a little bit of background. Obviously, I mentioned that you are a journalist for the Voice of America, but maybe catch people up on what you're currently doing. And it's only an hour, but I imagine we could fill that up very quickly just talking about what you have done in the journalist space. So, go ahead.
Well, I've been in broadcast journalism for almost as long as I've been in ham radio. I got my license like a lot of people when I was about 12 years old, upgraded fairly quickly to general, I think when I was 13 or 14. And I got into radio first and then television while I was a teen. My first jobs at radio stations in Las Vegas were when I was in high school, and started out working in public television and then the NBC affiliate in Las Vegas. I was on the air at the PBS station, Channel 10 in Las Vegas, and then worked as an assignment editor at what was then KVBC Channel 3 in Las Vegas before going over to Japan in the early 1980s as a freelance reporter and working for the Japan Cable Television, JCTV, which was an English language TV channel in Tokyo. And I was an anchor for the morning newscast. It was wired up to all the expat apartments in Tokyo. Came back to the States around 1983, was news director at KNUU 970 AM in Las Vegas. Did that for a few years and then went off to Southern California. Worked at KTI TV 63 in Ventura County as assignment editor. Then I was hired by the Associated Press, and I was in Charleston, West Virginia for a few years, moved up to the Broadcast News Center for AP in Washington, D.C., and then decided to go back to Japan again. And I ended up spending 26 years in Asia. It's an entire generation, and end up working for the Voice of America as a bureau chief, first in South Asia, then Northeast Asia, and then Southeast Asia. Came back to the United States 2016, covered the last, it was about 8 months of the Obama administration. I was VOA's senior diplomatic correspondent, traveling around with John Kerry when he was Secretary of State.
Wow.
And then after the Trump inauguration, came over onto the White House beat and had quite a whirlwind time. Probably did, I lost count, dozens and dozens of flights on Air Force One, Air Force Two as well with Vice President Pence. Been on Air Force One now a few times with President Biden. So it's gone. The years, I can tell you, have gone by very quickly. And,
you sound like the type of person. I mean, I was listening to an interview you did. You basically got into journalism when you were 17. You're the type of person, it sounds like, who really found what they were passionate about and went hard.
I always knew I wanted to be in broadcasting, and I have to tell you, when I was a kid, I always thought that I would be behind the scenes. You know, I was fascinated with like the operating the TV cameras, and as I got a little bit older and got into shortwave radio and then ham radio, a little bit more of the engineering aspect appealed to me. But unlike my brother Jay, K7COM, younger brother, who is an electronic engineer by trade, I got into what I call the soft side of broadcasting, doing the journalism, getting in front of the camera. There's a lot less math involved.
I bet, yeah. So what ended up bringing you into amateur radio? Because you said so you were a ham first, right, before you got into journalism.
Yes, by a few years. I, like a lot of kids, I got fascinated with radio receivers, shortwave radio. I recall being in my grandmother's kitchen in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she had a radio and it had AM and then something else, this SW. Yeah. And I clicked on that. And I actually, the first station I heard was the Voice of America out of North Carolina. And so I was amazed how this all worked and started to read up a bit on it and got really into shortwave listening, was sending off to Moscow for QSL cards. I'm sure I was on an FBI list, you know, because I was getting mail from the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And never really thought too much about getting involved on the transmitting side. And then in junior high school, my best friend, Kevin, we started doing a mock AM, 100 milliwatt transmission. We weren't big time pirate radio like they have in New York City on FM, but 100 milliwatt AM broadcasting down the block. And we both decided to get take the novice test together. I think I passed by one or two questions, if I recall correctly, and that's how I got started in it.
I found radio kind of the same way. AM, FM, sure, but then there was that little switch, that SW switch. What's that all about? In this case, it was like it was three different options: S1, 2, or 3, and that was what led me down the how many pieces of wire could I find around the house and twist them together and see if I could get it up in the air. That was my introduction to it. I love it. That's great. So you're an avid Twitter user. I did want to ask this because I was thinking about this today. Um, where are you at now with followers? You're over 80,000, I think, followers on Twitter.
107, I think.
107.
107,000.
Okay.
Last time I checked.
Mm-hmm. Is Twitter like the app for news at this point? Would you say? Is it kind of like the fastest, most direct?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Look, there's a lot of stuff you got to filter through, and you have to know how to read Twitter. And a lot of people just get consumed with all the chatter and the back and forth. But how I got into Twitter, I was actually working in India, and there was a terrorist attack down in Bombay. I was Mumbai. I was up in Delhi at the time, and the news we were getting from Indian cable TV was horribly unreliable, and the most accurate information were people who were on their Blackberries, because that was the big device back then, who were inside the hotels that were being attacked. So I started to use Twitter the same way that I used to use the police scanner, right?
Yeah.
It was not something you're going to take and put directly on the air, but it was one more source that needed to be checked out. I never imagined that I would be an active transmitter on Twitter, and just thought I would use it as sort of a passive device to help with my news gathering.
Indeed. Is there any new apps like TikTok's coming to mind? The viewership numbers that I'm seeing on TikTok are through the roof, and there's some people that are in the news that have TikToks that are pretty popular. Any thoughts on that one? Because it's obviously video based. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't done TikTok. I've been on a lot of the others. I use Instagram more for social though, and Facebook. I'll post my stories on Facebook as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that Facebook has that option. You can go public or just share stuff with friends. But for me, because I'm doing news constantly, and I'm sending out news on Twitter and looking for news on Twitter, I spend about 95% of my social media time on Twitter, but I'm also on Facebook, and I use WhatsApp, Instagram, but I think you got to have a limit. There's only so many hours in the day, and yeah, I could just spend 24 hours a day on all the different platforms. And I was a bit cautious also about TikTok because of, there were all sorts of concerns about, your personal data going back to China. I guess that was a concern on Zoom as well for a period of time.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I think some of that's changed a bit, but yeah, that's kind of where it originated from. So going back to ham radio a little bit, has amateur radio at all kind of helped you in your line of work? Were there areas that kind of jumped out where you kind of had a leg up against maybe, other people that are trying to crack a story or something along those lines?
Oh, absolutely. Earlier in my career, I can recall times when there were earthquakes that hit in Mexico and other places, and I would get on the air and talk to people that were in these areas and then relay that news to the Associated Press or others. So it has been a valuable resource from time to time. And we had how we met just a couple of weeks ago. I did tweet out something about what you had regarding the apparent jamming of the 40-meter QSOs between Cuba and the Cuban Americans by the Cuban government. So it does pop up. But I would also say I have no doubt that I would have not had the trajectory for my career in broadcast journalism without my start in amateur radio. Mm-hmm. I was a slightly, introverted, nerdy kid of 12, 13, and getting on ham radio, it taught me some socialization skills. public speaking. I think by the time I was 15 or 16, I was teaching a CW course for the Las Vegas Radio Amateur Club. Obviously, it helped with geography, physics, electronics. I met through the ham clubs. Even though I was a really young kid, I was accepted by these older people, the hams in different clubs around town in Las Vegas. And so I think ham radio really gave me a leg up in my career.
That's awesome. Now I have to ask, do you still do Morse code? Do you still do CW? Is that a
Yes.
thing? Awesome.
I haven't done it for a couple of months now because I've gone crazy with FT8 and FT4. A friend of mine, Martin, KJ6SDF, had seemed to be having so much fun and success with the new digital modes that I decided to go whole hog into that for a bit. But yes, I can copy well above 20 words per minute. I wouldn't call myself a high speed CW operator.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is I only use a straight key.
Okay.
And
sure.
I've tried the bugs over the years. I like to be a bit, I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So having to go too many times with a bug, I'm sure if I sat down and did it for 2 days straight, just off the air and practice, I'd probably get the hang of it. But I've never had the patience, and I think I've got a pretty good fist with the straight key. So, why ruin a good thing?
Yeah, it's not broken, right? The bug always has a weird tempo to me. It feels there's an oddity to it. I don't know what it is. It's like an extra appendage, right? Versus just a straight key, right? It makes you feel like you're kind of in control of it. Whereas the bug, you've got to get used to flipping it or, getting used to the speed.
Yeah, I think I don't exactly have the surgeon's touch, I would say. So pounding down on a straight key that I can kind of adjust. And I've been doing it now literally for 50 years, just about. So I've gotten pretty used to the straight key.
Very good. I was going through some of the stories that you have on the VOA. There was a lot of mentions of Russian involvement with elections, Chinese, cyber attacks, stuff like that. Has there been any stories that you've come upon that feature RF in some capacity? Have you seen anything like that in the recent months or anytime, well, in the last couple of years, I guess?
Well, of course, the big one right now is Havana Syndrome, right? It
yeah.
seems like there's some RF component. I can't say I've done a deep investigation. I know people who have been affected by that. I have my theories on it, that it's either some ultra low frequency or ultra high frequency. So reading all the stories about that, definitely RF comes into my mind of and trying to figure out what's going on with that. Also, when I was in Japan, we had a cult. I think it was called Panawave, and they were into all sorts of weird rays were being beamed at them, and then they claimed they had a secret ray weapon too. So having that background in RF and amateur radio helps me to report some of this stuff and use the proper terminology, and sometimes debunk stuff as well.
You mentioned that, and I actually pulled up the story. One of the stories that came up is Panawave cult raises concerns among Japanese authorities, and then that reminded me of the sarin gas cult. Right.
I was there in Tokyo for that. Right.
That was
the Aum cult. AUM.
Aum Shinrikyo.
Correct.
Yeah. With I can't remember his name, and he probably doesn't deserve the airtime. But
Shoko Asahara was the guru.
Yeah, that was a weird group too. I don't know if they had any radio involvement, but I also, well, I'm not trying to go down a cult rabbit hole, but Jonestown also used HF radio for their discussion stateside. I always found that interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Well, talk about your time when you were in Asia. I think when we were talking before, you mentioned you took radios with you, right? When you would go out on your on these.
Well, I was licensed in every country that I lived. In
Hmm.
Japan, I was 7J1AIL. In India, VU3USJ, and Thailand, HS0ZLK, I think was my call.
Wow.
And then a few other countries that I went to, either as a tourist or working. When I went to Afghanistan, of course, which is in the news right now,
Hmm.
I did get licensed there. Tango 6 Alpha Delta, I think was my call sign. In my shirt
Hmm.
here, Palau, Tango 88 Sierra Hotel,
We
operated there.
we got to have you back just to become an expert in explaining to people how to get licenses in other countries, because that is a
Yeah.
huge question. You sound like you're an expert in that because you lived it.
Well, I have some failure stories as well, because in Nepal, for example, I finally did get 9N7 VOA, but by the time I got the license, I had run out of my time in the country. It was a
Oh,
catch-22. They kept sending me back and forth to different offices, and I didn't, I guess, get the subtle hint that I needed to, slip some green currency into some palms to expedite the process, but I can't do that. VOA. I work for the U.S. government, and I'm not
right.
going to hand out bribes for ham radio licenses. So some countries it's very easy, and some countries it's really really tough. And
Hmm.
Afghanistan was the one that I was most proud of getting the license, because by far the most rare DX I've ever been in, and it's amazing. I was probably running about 70 watts output with a high SWR and a wire strung on a hot tin roof on top of the VOA Cobble Bureau. And I was just having pileups. And I was
Oh,
thinking,
sure.
this never happens in Japan,
Right,
when
right,
I'm
right.
operating with better antennas. So, word would get out, because by then there was spotting already on the internet. So
Right.
just one person picks you up and everybody piles on. And there are these people out there with these incredible receivers and 5-element beams, and even if you've got a peanut whistle for a station, they'll be able to hear you.
What was the radio you were using when you were in Kabul?
I had taken a Yaesu with me. Maybe it was the 897. I had it in one of those Pelican cases.
That's the one with
And,
the
it was
side
by
load.
far the heaviest piece of luggage that I took into Afghanistan with me. I'm sure, I can't even imagine what they thought of me, but there's all sorts of U.S. military people coming through there with all kinds of
Yeah.
exotic stuff back then.
That was the one with
But
the side batteries, right? Where you had the like they would slot into place the batteries.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I did end up running it off of a power source, though, and that's an issue in some countries that you do go into. That I just worked a guy today in Liberia, and looked him up, and he's got solar and a little generator to stay on the air there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of the times that's what we do now is just because it's so portable. It's so easy to be able to take that. But I'm it sounds like you were running off of power lead, so you weren't really portable. You were working out of the VOA in
Right,
Kabul
right.
or
I had
Kabul.
commercial power, and it's miraculously stayed on most of the time. When I at my home QTH in Delhi, actually I put in a rack of batteries there, because the power went off quite frequently. So I did have battery backup when I was operating from India.
So man, it's almost hard to keep track of all the things you've done. So when you were in the video, I keep switching this because it keeps cutting out on me. I'm sorry about that. For
Yep,
everybody
there we are.
watching, I'm
Sorry about
literally
that.
clicking back and forth to make sure that we've got your video. I don't know what's going on. That's just the fun stuff we have to deal with when we go live like this. Um, so when you were in Asia, right, and you kind of mentioned it as, I think you even said in an interview, what'd you say, Asia but China, ABC?
ABC, right. I've never lived in China. I know just enough about China
Uh,
to definitively say I am not a China expert.
Okay. Were you with the VOA when you were in doing this Asia circuit, if you will, going around to different countries?
For part of it, yes. I worked in my earlier years in Tokyo for others in broadcasting, and then I think it was 2000. I'm trying to remember the year, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I joined VOA full time and moved to Delhi.
Wow. How long are you in Delhi?
3.5 years.
Wow, man, you've been all over the place. And in most, if not all those times, you brought a radio with you, and you'd operate kind of when you had the time and whatnot.
Every country I've lived in, I've always been on HF and been licensed in that country. Thailand was a little bit tricky. Some countries separate the station license and the operator license.
Okay.
And to get the station license, your equipment has to be approved. And Thailand had this rule when I was there. You could not have a radio with 6 meters in it. I think the communist
Military?
insurgency had used 6 meters
Ah.
at one time. So it was banned in Thailand. So I actually had to come back to the States. I went to HRO in Oregon and found the only new type accepted HF radio without 6 meters. It was an ICOM, actually, and took that back to me with me to Thailand. So I had a type accepted radio that didn't have 6 meters in it, so I could actually operate.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
I was on like the 15th floor of a high-rise apartment building, so I had balcony antennas and wires pouring out of the balcony, and did okay there.
Well, since you've operated in so many countries on different radios, different physical structures, different building levels, what has been your best experience playing ham radio, being out there? Best country, best location, you tell me.
Well, I think Afghanistan was the most memorable in terms of being sought after DX. That was by far the most challenging place I've operated from. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's anything similar to what people do launching these D expeditions on rocks out in the middle of the island and have to spend $100,000 to get out there, and maybe the boat has to turn around before they even arrive.
Yeah.
So I call what I do a sort of mini D expeditions when I've gone to the other countries. I think in Bangladesh, where I was S21 VOA, I visited some local ham there, and conditions weren't great, and I maybe made 2 QSOs because I didn't want to spend like 10 hours, in the guy's house, operating his radio, because I didn't take, maybe I took some gear, I can't remember. To me, I've learned just how challenging it can be to operate in high noise environments. So I had to run a counterpoise when I was in Delhi because the S unit noise level was like 7 constantly.
Right.
Tokyo is in the middle of an urban environment, and you have to get real creative with antennas. I think one of the coolest things I did was when I was in Hawaii and had some portable equipment with me, and found that rolling on a hill right up to the ocean. So you've got some elevation above the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and then 10 meter FM just rolls in from Japan all of a sudden. So what I've realized is like the best place to have would be on a hill overlooking
The water,
the ocean, and you will have better conditions than your neighbor 3 miles away, any day of the year.
when you were in Japan, was that Oahu? You were on Oahu?
Hawaii, yeah, Hawaii. Yeah, I did operate from Oahu, and then I also operated from Iriomote, which is a Japanese island that's very close to Taiwan.
Okay.
And I was I think it's portable JR1, I think 7J1AIL portable JR1 or something like that. And that was an amazing experience as well. When I was single, it was very easy to go on these 1 week ham radio vacations. XYLs, as you know, have limited tolerance for going on vacation and sitting in a bungalow or something
in
and
the heat,
working
in the
DX.
humidity, and so your
Yeah.
significant other doesn't necessarily go on these journeys with you, or do they?
Well, I have not done any of my mini expeditions since I've been back
Okay.
stateside. When I was overseas, of course, I was traveling for work on my own usually. So,
Oh,
if when I had spare hours, it was pretty easy to hop on the air.
very good. I just want to remind everybody watching, if you at Ham Radio Crash Course, my name, with your question, I've already captured a bunch of them, and we'll definitely get to them, so just hang on. But I do want you to restate, because I didn't catch the country. I missed it. Your T88SH, which country was that call sign from?
Palau.
Palau.
It's out in the Pacific.
Yeah, yeah.
Palau is the most common spelling. It's one of the most beautiful places I've been to. If you're into like what do you call it, snorkeling, right? Not scuba diving. There's incredible scuba diving, but you can just go right on the beach and with a snorkeling mask see incredible tropical fish. It's like going to the Monterey Aquarium, except you're in the water with the fish. Highly recommend visiting Palau, anybody who gets the chance. And I think it's still pretty easy to get a license there. It's an independent nation. The U.S. Takes care of Palau's defense, so they have a zip code actually. So maybe you can mail your rig, out there ahead of time.
Was Palau one of the countries that was involved when they were doing the nuclear testing for weapons? Is that?
I don't think Palau was involved with any of that. If somebody will correct us, but I think the old name of Palau was the Caroline Islands.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because if the United States is involved with them, I would think that there's some kind of conservatorship of some kind for some historic reason, but unfamiliar. Maybe it's
World War II. It was occupied by the Japanese during World War II. That's for sure.
Oh, so is it north of New Zealand? Is it up in that area of the Pacific?
Yeah, it's way north of New Zealand.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go look at a map now because I don't know where that is in my head. So when you go portable now, you mentioned you play FT8. And you're having some fun with that, making contacts. Oh, I should ask you, what's your furthest contact on FT8 if you know it?
Let's see. I work South Africa today.
Cool.
New Zealand, which is pretty impressive from the East Coast right now.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's with which radio are you using for the FT8 there?
ICOM 7300, both FT8 and FT4. Trying to mess around with MSK 144. I've picked up a couple of stations in the past couple of days, but what I understand about MSK 144, and other people I'm sure tuning in know more about it than I do, you need to have a lot of patience, and you need to stay up well after midnight if you're going to make a QSO. But I thought with the meteor shower this week that maybe I could get some in before midnight. So I might go out after midnight tonight and see if I can actually work a station.
Maybe we'll all have to get that
6
set
meters.
up. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, maybe
6
I'll have to
meters.
get that set up on the after chat and see if we can make that work on Discord. Reminder for everybody watching, the Discord after chat is after this show. That's where we answer ham radio questions live. So if you have more questions, we'll try and take them there. So how about portable radio? Do you do any portable events? Have you... Parks on the air, summits on the air, anything along those lines?
No, I work a lot of those stations, although I'm not a real paper collector. I'll sometimes carry around an HT with me. I have a mobile on VHF, UHF. So when I'm driving around the States, I'll listen on 5.2. I have great QSOs on 5.2 simplex traveling on the highways, and sometimes you have to be pretty quick about it because you're going through somebody's town at 75 miles an hour.
Right.
Or there's a trucker going in the opposite direction. So, yeah, I haven't done that much portable lately. People ask, I have not operated on Air Force One.
Oh, you got that was going to be my last question. I'm like, you got to get in there. How do you make that happen?
I don't know. Maybe for my last trip, I'll it's controlled by the Air Force, right? So Uh, we on the larger. There are many planes that are called Air Force One, of course.
Right.
The larger planes, you can get some RF inside the plane. Your cell phones work. The smaller planes that they use, they're pretty well sealed, and as soon as they close the doors, you can't even get a cell phone signal inside the plane.
I imagine Air Force One must be just an absolute communications beast. It's probably got so many radios in that thing that it would make your head spin, I assume, with all the information they need to be able to keep in contact with.
Well, one thing I can tell you about it, we're rarely allowed to use the internet or the phones on Air Force One. It has to be something really incredible happening. But one time I was allowed to make a call to my newsroom to phone in some breaking news from the plane. And it's actually a push to talk system that
Sure.
you go through an operator. And they have made the button on it, super hard to press, I guess, so you don't yak at length on this phone. So that was like something, out of decades ago. So I have made a phone call from Air Force One.
That's like a true ham radio, right? Keep it brief. You just want to get that information
Right.
across, and then cut the comms, right? I like it. All right. So we got a couple of questions. Let's see.
Okay.
Did I get through all my good ones? I know you mentioned something too, and I didn't want to forget. Yeah, you mentioned Bhutan. Man, I just love the story of you getting all these licenses. Somebody did ask, do you maintain some of these licenses? Are you hanging on to them? What do you have to do for a lot of them?
Well, most of them are pretty provisional, so they last for 30 days or a year.
Oh, okay.
I was renewing my Japan license for a period of time. Bhutan, I've operated several times as A52SW, I think was my call there. So I guess, when I T88SH, by the way, got recycled, this one here. But A52SW, I guess I would go back and get that one again if I went back to Bhutan. And that's another place I highly recommend if you have the opportunity to get anywhere near Asia, the Himalayas. Definitely put Bhutan on your itinerary, and it's fairly easy to get licensed there. Although I do recall the noise level was quite high there, which I was surprised because it's a very rural country, but it did have a high noise level.
There was something you mentioned too on the emails that we were exchanging. When you were with the AP, there was a situation where there was an earthquake, and you were able to relay information. What was that like? What was the setup? The radio you used? What was your how were you involved?
I think I was living in Las Vegas
okay.
at the time, I believe. So one of the quakes was in Mexico. There were a couple times that I did that. Of course, we just had a horrible one again, a magnitude 7.2 in Haiti today.
Yeah.
And I understand there's some emergency traffic being worked with that quake, which is good to hear that hams are involved with that. And I'm trying to remember where the other earthquake was, but I think it's a little bit more challenging to get sort of a scoop via ham radio these days, because even in disaster areas, there are so many people that are on Twitter in these areas, and they're putting videos up. Like within an hour today, we had video from the town in Haiti that was the hardest hit.
Yeah.
So where in times past, it was, all the power's knocked out, all the comms are knocked out except ham radio. But it's a good combination, I think, with Twitter and ham radio as well.
Yeah, I don't even know what that looks like in most cases. You would have to have a serious comms down situation for you not to be able to use something like Twitter, right? I don't really know of recent times where that's been a big thing, other than, I guess, Cuba, right? Because they did shut down social media.
Well, yeah, we have
briefly.
deliberate shutting down of the internet. That happened the other day during the elections in Zambia. A number of other countries throttle the internet. Iran, I believe, maybe Belarus as well. Although if you started getting on some of those countries trying to pass that sort of information, you probably wouldn't be on the air for very long. since it's pretty easy to track down
Right.
the source of those signals. But there was a great historical event. The king of Sikkim, Himalayan
Okay.
kingdom, he was actually on the air when his country was being invaded by the Indian army, and put out a plea for help via ham radio. I think he was talking to a guy in Germany, if I recall correctly. And so, that is a very interesting part of ham radio history.
Well, that's when we send in the special forces ham radio operators, right? That's
Yeah.
our tactical response team that we have as ham radio operators. I think the ARRL, operated by the ARRL, I think, right?
I think the king was hoping the message would,
Yeah.
traffic would get passed to the UN
Of course.
eventually.
Yeah,
But
indeed.
if your country's being taken over, being invaded, I'm not sure that appealing for help via ham radio is going to be the most effective manner.
Yeah, somebody probably would have replied, "Excuse me, this is our net frequency. We
Yeah.
meet here nightly. We need you to
Yeah.
vacate
Ask
the
it,
frequency."
do you QSL?
Yeah, EQSL only. That's the only way I update my QSLs. That's it. I forgot to ask you on your 7300. What's your home antenna? That's important. Everybody likes antennas. We need to know.
Well, my primary one is the Gap Titan DX, which when I got it, I was really skeptical about it because the thing sort of sits on the ground,
Mhm.
right? And it's an amazing antenna. It's not even supposed to load on 6 meters, and it does. And I work, all over on 6 meters with this antenna. And then it can get a bit finicky after a couple of years. There's some connections maybe are getting loose up in the antenna, so it won't load up now on 17 meters for the digital part of the band. So I just put up one of those ham antennas. I mounted it on put it on a mag mount and took one of the XYL's baking tins to
Nice.
make a base, put that on the roof of my sunroom on the back of my house, and it's amazing. And I only run 100 watts or less.
Still, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
I was super skeptical. I've tried to put up some wire antennas, had no real success, and now I'm looking. I've got 2 big mature maple trees in my backyard, and I want to put up either an end fed or a dipole for 80 meters. So I need to go up like 65 feet on both ends, and
Nice.
Got a quote from a tree climber, which was worth more than the cost of the antenna. And so now some other hams are suggesting I find somebody with a bow and arrow or a slingshot,
Sure.
and talking about pulley systems. So
Yeah,
that may
it
be
is.
the next project on the property here.
Yeah, I always recommend people use those little naval pulleys, right? For, something that's going to be around salt water. They'll last a really long time. You hoist that up there, you'd be good. Got a question related to antennas. So you've obviously set up stations and temporary stations in other countries. What antennas do you normally run? It sounds like when you were in Kabul, you kind of just bodged something together, right? You said it was kind of high SWR.
Those for all the mini D expeditions except Palau, where there was a station already set up in the hotel. They've all been wire antennas.
What was the station in the hotel like? What were they running?
Oh, it was equipment, state of the art at the time, donated by Yaisu.
Oh,
It's
wow.
the only time in my entire 50-year ham career that I've used an amplifier. And they had Yagi antennas and switchable. It's I don't know if this station is still there. There's actually there were 2 or 3 hotels I think that were operating stations for hams. They were mostly coming from Japan.
Okay.
So the Japanese it wasn't too far from Japan, and the Japanese were willing to pay to operate these stations.
I'm making a note of that right now. I need to go back and look that up, because a DX destination that has ham radio equipment already set up sounds like a pretty good time, I think.
Believe it or not, there are quite a few setups like that. They're in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Less fancy than a 5-star hotel room, I think. And then there was a guy for a while had stations set up in places like Laos, Cambodia, in Vietnam that you could go uh, operate as well. So
Hmm.
there, if you want to do a DX a vacation, there are quite a few of these set up around the world.
Ah, I love it. So everybody watching, again, if you tag me with your questions, I'll hit them. But another one coming in. This one was from uh, Ham Radio Crash Course, or they tagged me. What does VOA look like today? Still broadcasting on shortwave, and if so, what continents?
Yeah, so a lot of people think VOA was or is only shortwave, and actually, very little of what VOA does these days is shortwave. We
Right.
have 47 language services, including English and Learning English. Some of them still are broadcasting on shortwave radio. We also broadcast on medium wave
Hmm.
in some areas, including into North Korea. But most of our services now are into television, either doing many hours a day. For example, right now in Afghanistan, and for many, many years, we've had some of the top rated newscasts in Dari and Pashto in Afghanistan. It's anchored from a studio in Washington, D.C., with correspondents in Kabul and other places. Uh, Africa VOA is huge, both on radio and we're also doing a lot on the web, on the internet. So it really depends on the target country. What we're looking for is what is the most effective way to reach that audience. So doing a TV service for North Korea doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
Nobody's going to be able to watch it, but people can clandestinely listen to medium wave and some shortwave radio in North Korea. Burma, our television newscast, is incredibly popular there. And I think all the language services also have websites.
Hmm.
So our Tibetan service is another one that's extremely valuable in an area where the Chinese government represses outside communication and also communications in the Tibetan language. Mandarin Chinese.
Hmm.
People have VPNs so they can get stuff through the internet, even if they're not able to pick stuff up off of radio. But in a lot of countries like Iran, for example, people have satellite dishes. And so our broadcasts in Farsi are very, very popular in Iran. So, and a lot of what I'm doing is broadcasting, writing, and reporting stories in English from the White House or when I'm traveling with the presidents. And then that gets picked up by the language services and translated into other languages.
Yeah, right, and of course your Twitter too is the fastest way to get some of that information, right, for the VOA.
Absolutely.
And I left the @ off, but that's your Twitter handle is W7VOA. So make sure everybody goes and adds
Yeah,
Steve on Twitter.
I picked that when I got on Twitter because I thought, yeah, nobody's ever going to pay any attention to what my Twitter handle is. I'm just going to use it to monitor what's going on. So if I knew I would end up with more than 100,000 followers, I probably would have picked something besides a call sign, a ham radio call sign. But
When
yeah.
when I got tagged to interview you, somebody said, "Hey Josh, why don't you interview Steve?" And your call sign's right there. Somebody replied to that and said, "I've been following you this whole time, and I had no idea you were a ham. I just knew you as the White House correspondent or the bureau chief." And that cracked me up because somebody else that follows you, also a ham radio operator, didn't even look at the tag for your actual name on Twitter. I thought that was quite funny. Yeah, that's pretty cool, though. Let's see. So we covered the T88SH for Don. Thanks, Don, for that question. Zach Van asks, we already covered the renewing of the call signs. Let's see. When you travel, you use wire antennas. We got that. Patrick Dickey, slightly unrelated. What are the old radios in your background there? I think it's a great question.
Oh, the ones that you see under the VOA circular sign are both Crosleys. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio originally. Crosley was out of Cincinnati. I love old radios, so the Crosley brand has a special place in my heart, and I tend to get obsessed with collecting sometimes, so I need to discipline myself and narrow it. So almost all my old radios are Crosleys unless somebody's gifted me something else. And then on the other side, right there, that is old timers will recognize is an original Heathkit Tour, 2 meter AM radio.
2 meter AM.
And I am looking for, if anybody has one, the microphone that attaches to it. The Tours and the Sixers are pretty easy to find, but apparently the microphones are really hard to find. So I'm looking for the microphone for the Tour to complete the collection there.
So another good question came in. Steve, are you multilingual? Oh, boy, I can't imagine you say no to that question. I don't know. What languages do you speak?
Well, the only other language, I like to say I'm still working on English, right? But the only other language where I've got a decent level of fluency where I can easily function in day-to-day life is Japanese, because I spent so many years in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And India, I did not pick up a lot of Hindi because English is sort of the lingua franca when you travel through different parts of India. I was halfway decent with Korean, and as far as ordering food in restaurants and giving directions in taxis, and Thai similarly. The most important thing is I think is being able to say the equivalent in any language. Cerveza uno más, por favor. One more beer,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
That's the most critical phrase I think to learn in
What
any
is it?
foreign language.
Donde español, or where's the bathroom, or something like that?
Right,
That's the other
baño.
one. Baño, yeah. There was so a couple of questions on how long you were in Japan. I assume you were there for a little while to be able to pick some of it up. But
I lived there twice, actually. I was there
wow.
81, 82.
Okay.
Was my first time in Japan. And then the second time was 1990 to 2006.
Wow.
So
okay.
A total of about 18 years, but that's putting two different times together.
Somebody asked, is Steve's pick on the shelf the former king of Thailand transmitting? That is
yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, they picked it up. Hey, look at that. That's cool. Whoever got that in the comments nailed it. Good job. Look at that.
That is the late king, who was a ham radio operator. What was his call sign? HS1A, I think.
Wow. That's cool.
So I'm not sure what the HT is. It looks like a very old Yaesu.
Uh-huh.
And he was an avid photographer as well.
That's cool.
So that was a going away gift from my Thai staff when I was leaving Thailand, because they knew I was a ham, and so that was like the perfect
really cool
gift picture.
I like that.
Royalty. There's the king of Thailand, the king of Sikkim was a ham, and of course the late king of Jordan, who was JY1. I think his son Abdullah II might also be a ham. I'm not sure, but his father was of course quite active on the air.
Lionel KJ7OH asks, dumb question. What are the snacks like on Air Force One? Better than peanuts? Gotta be.
Actually, this is a snack from Air Force One. These are Air Force One M&Ms. And
that's the Donald Trump M&Ms, right?
Right. I don't have the Joe Biden M&Ms yet, because it takes a number of months before they make them onto the plane. You would think by now they would have them on the plane. Maybe they've been on in the past week or two.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're M&Ms. There are lots of great snacks. The cool thing about Air Force One is you can pretty much order up anything you want to eat at any time. So there is a set menu, and they feed you very well on the plane. during the past administration, I would say that the favorite recurring dish among the reporters traveling on the plane was the taco bowl,
Taco bowl.
and was excellent.
That's like a fried
Um,
shell in a bowl and then just load
yeah,
it up.
it was yeah, classic taco bowl, and it's Air Force food, which for all the military veterans out there, arguably it's not good as Navy food, but better than Army food, and let's not even talk about Marine Corps food. Um, um, and there are two kitchens in the plane, and you can ask them for a sandwich at any time. Air Force One, alcohol is served. Air Force Two, during the previous administration, with Mike Pence, who did not drink alcohol, was a dry plane. So that could be a tough one coming home when we were coming back from Asia. I guess you could have, snuck something in. But
May not want to get caught by the vice president or the vice president's
or
wife,
his wife,
right?
yeah.
with the flask.
That's another story. So it would be nice, we'd finish up all our work. But I had to tell you that you have to be very careful on Air Force One, because my job when I'm on the plane, I'm the radio pool reporter. I'm responsible for firing up a digital recorder within a few seconds and recording broadcast quality audio should the president walk back and start talking. So that meant on the flights to Asia, I could never take a sleeping pill and knock myself out. So we'd wake up. I would not have any sleep really. And the president was refreshed and ready to go for an 18, 20-hour day. And,
right.
I've been up for like 24 hours at that point. So I had some 36-hour days. So these trips are not that pleasant. The short ones are a lot of fun, I can say, but the transatlantic, trans-Pacific trips are a lot of work and very, very intense, and no room for error if you're a reporter on those trips.
Well, I had one personal question, totally unrelated to ham radio, but now I've got two. So I podcast as well, and so I've gone through all kinds of digital recorders. What does the Voice of America use as their digital recorder in those situations? Like the example you just gave, right, where you got to have a recorder ready to go for good quality audio.
If I knew you were going to ask me this,
I know
I'd brought them out for show and tell.
Yeah.
I generally. This has been a rule of mine over the decades, and a lot of military veterans, again, will relate to this. Do not use the government-issued equipment. If you really need to depend on it, you probably want to go out and buy your own equipment. But VOA will provide basically what we ask for. I've had very good luck with the Zooms, the Denons.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think it's the Zoom H4 is an excellent digital recorder. Now it's a lot different if you're working in the field than if you have a studio set up. And I've got all sorts of stuff on my desk here. There's one of my recorders, Roland. So this is a bit bulky to take out in the field, but this is what I'm using as my when I'm not recording into the computer. For stuff off the TV or off the internet, or when I'm voicing something here. And I have a bunch of, professional microphones. I've tried a lot of different things, Sennheisers, for example, Audio Technicas. But the microphone I'm talking in right now, which I use for a lot of home broadcast work, is made by TZ Audio Products Stellar X2, which is a relatively affordable microphone that people say is pretty darn close to the Newmans, which cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's one of my favorites right now.
So let me make sure I understood this then. So you're on Air Force One at a hair's trigger notice, you've got to start recording the president or something, right? And so you're grabbing these recorders and you're going, straight out there. Is that and so you're holding the microphone with the recorder kind of thing, or how's that work?
Yeah, I've usually got, when I'm on Air Force One, because when we get in and out of the plane, before, under the wing, and when we land under the wing, I've got a microphone on a big boom so that I can record the sound and without putting a microphone right up to getting my hand right next to the president's body, because Secret Service doesn't like that.
Yeah, not a good.
And I have tapped one president, I won't say which one, with the boom mic, like Kiss one time. So you got to be very careful if you're, trying to look at your recorder and trying to tweet out something at the same time. So I also now have a pistol grip. Hang on a second, I'll show you something.
Nice. Well, you guys, now you have to sit through all this, because now I'm asking all my personal questions as somebody that does recording and stuff. This is fascinating to me.
I don't have a microphone attached to it right now, but you can kind of see.
Yeah.
It's got a nice cushion in there.
Yep.
And I mean, this thing, you can see
cool.
how far it extends. And this is a small, lightweight one. Some of the TV networks, the TV network is they have a producer, a videographer, and a sound technician on the plane. So that's all that guy does. He or woman. All they have to do is worry about the audio. But I've got a lot of other things that I have to do too, and I need to fit all the equipment into a backpack and carry it with me in my hand.
Sure.
And I usually have a recorder strapped around my neck, so I've got one hand free for the boom mic.
Yeah. So you said boom mic, recorder, and then you're also tweeting at the same time. Is that legit? Is that like super pro move right there?
Well, I'm using the first thing I'm doing I carry 2 cell phones with me.
Okay.
Is I'm sending what are called pull reports to all the other radio networks to tell them what's going on.
Okay.
So, the president's speaking right now. He's talking about Afghanistan. Boom. And, I'll send you audio as soon as we get into the plane, before we take off. So, yeah, I've got to pull the SD card out, slam it into my computer. I'm hooked up with a MiFi, and send that audio file out before the few seconds that we've got before the plane gets to like 3,000 feet and we lose the cell phone signal. So it's very, very stressful, I have to say.
Wow.
And if one thing goes wrong, and that's the other thing, I carry backups for everything.
Sure.
I carry backup microphone, backup recorders, backup cables. That's why I have two cell phones.
SD
no
cards
margin for error.
SD cards probably go bad on you all the time.
Yeah, and I had the other day when we had a race across the South Lawn because the president switched sides he was coming out on. My recorder actually fell off the strap, and I picked it up, got back into position, hit record, and noticed that the SD card had fallen out.
Oh,
the door had opened and had fallen out. Fortunately, the president did not stop to talk.
Yeah.
Well, that
worked out, I guess, in the end, but it was not the plan.
Yeah.
Right?
So you got backup SD cards, everything, and I've been doing this for years, and every time I do it, I learn something new. Sort of like ham radio.
Yeah.
You learn something new every time you get on the air.
Well, we did get another question I think is a good one. What HT do you use? Do you use HTs, handhelds?
I have lots.
What's your favorite then? Maybe hit us with your favorite.
Well, I'm pretty partial to Yaesu's.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the only one I've got in the room with me here. This is a VHF only, the VX 170. I think this is one of the older, cheaper ones, but you can see the antenna I've got on there to be able to hit some of the repeaters.
That's like your boom. That's like your audio boom right there in
exactly.
antenna form. All right. So my last question that I want to know, because you spent so much time in Japan, what's your favorite Japanese street food or favorite Japanese dish?
Well, I am a huge sushi fan, but that's not street food.
Right.
Konomiyaki is another dish. You might find that at some festivals in things like that. But Japanese food, there are 2 cuisines I could eat every day for the rest of my life. One is Japanese and the other is Mexican.
Okay. I always loved Anthony Bourdain's quote of, "I could be vegetarian if I lived in India." That'd be the only place I could be vegetarian, because they actually have very good vegetarian food.
I love Indian food, and it's very, very different depending on what part
of
the country you're in. Goan fish curry is one of my favorites from South Asia.
I don't know if I've had that. We have. I'm very lucky. I live next to Artesia, California, which is known as Little India, and they have both Punjabi and I don't know what you would call someone that's Tamil or speaks Tamil. That where they're from. That's south, right? I believe.
Yeah, that is definitely south. Probably a little bit spicier than some of the northern food.
That's what I like.
I just had XYL made Nepali momos for me tonight with homemade chili tomato sauce from homegrown.
Wow.
Super spicy dale, some of the hottest chilies in the world. So I'm a little bit adventuresome when it comes to food.
Awesome. That's very good. Well, Steve, this hour flew by as I expected. And I'm sure we could speak for hours more. And I think you froze again, so let me get you back here. Man, I got to figure out what that problem is. Thank you for bearing with me. I know you're probably talking and you see yourself freeze, so I apologize for the technical hurdle there.
I'm trying to look into the camera and not look off to the side. That's another pro tip.
Let me
don't
handle
look at yourself. Look at the camera.
Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for taking the questions. You have just an incredible background. All your fun ham radio stories, obviously. Everything you're doing out there with I harken back to you getting started when you were 17, and so just that experience in journalism. Again, you got to write a book, right? Do you have a book? Should we be linking to your book?
What I'd love, I don't have a current book out right now. I'm thinking of writing one that would basically the equivalent of teaching somebody how to fly a jet plane. Teach a book that would be a explainer about what I've done as a White House reporter and what you would have to do to be a reporter that travels around with the president. But I don't know, maybe there's only 6 people who would want to read that book.
I'm fascinated by the logistics of it, right? I had to stop you just to ask about the recorder, right? I want to know about those little, but I'm also geeky about that kind of stuff. This is awesome. And again, man, I'm gonna send an angry letter to Zoom, I think, after this this interview.
Somebody who's watching this probably knows why that's freezing up.
I've never had that happen, believe it or not. I don't touch my Zoom settings at all. Steve, what's the best way to find out more about you? I've got the link to your website, and I've also got your Twitter. All that's linked in the description. Is there anything else people need to know about you or what you're up to?
Take a look at my Twitter. That has some links to my personal page, and if you go to my personal page, there's all kinds of links over to LinkedIn and lots of other things, including ways to look at some of the video TV reports that I've done over the years.
Excellent. Again, Steve, W7VOA, make sure you go check him out on Twitter. Thank you again for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show with everybody. So just want to say a big thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
73.
All right. All right, everybody. We're going to head out here because I'm going to go do the Discord after chat. So we'll take your questions on Ham Radio. Link is in the description. I'm also going to be talking about the Radioddity giveaway. So if you're interested in getting in on that Radioddity giveaway, which is going to be next Saturday, then go onto the Discord, because guess what? I'm going to be using Discord for the giveaway. That's the best way to get in on that. Again, big shout out to the patrons. If you didn't catch last week's, that was Patron Picks episode where the patrons vote, and we talked about our HRCC link network, which allows us to do WiresX and D-Star and DMR to allow everybody to talk together. In fact, I've got my Yasu right there, my FT3DR. All right. Thank you, everybody, for the great comments. Everybody's saying 7-3, nice job, that you had a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. This was a really cool opportunity for me to talk to Steve, and I can already tell that we need to have him back on if he's willing to do so, which would be a lot of fun. And he's saying he's going to pop into the Discord. So he's got the link too, so he'll join us there hopefully in a little bit. Steve, it's in the live stream chat if you scroll down when you get in, or just send me an email and I'll help you out to get into it. But Steve's going to join us for a little bit, so you can ask him questions directly. If that sounds like fun, take the link in the description. All right, everybody. Let's see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Again, big thank you to the patrons. You help make the channel run, and I do appreciate that. I hope everybody has a safe week. The numbers are through the roof, particularly here in California. I'm a little concerned about Huntsville, to be honest, but so far I haven't changed my plans. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Sadly, a couple of our YouTuber friends are not going to be able to go for, different things they've got going on in their lives. I understand, but we'll try to work with what we've got. And lastly, the Brew Crew. Thank you, everybody. Okay, that's it. I'm Josh KI6NAZ. Enjoy the memes. I'll play you out. 73. All right, 73, everybody.